to keep moving forward.
Tom Cameron Quaid.
Chet Huntley. David French. John Chancellor.
Tom Brokaw.
A day to remember America's war veterans at home, in Iraq. As President Bush considers a change of course, his approval ratings hit a new low. Back to the future, the president turns to his father's advisors for help. Dollars and cents, a change of tune for music lovers everywhere. When was the last time you bought a CD? And playing tribute. A teenager keeps a proud tradition alive.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with John Siegenthaler.
Good evening, everyone. On this Veterans Day, Americans, led by President Bush, paid tribute to the men and women of our armed forces, those who have served in the past and those serving now around the world. The day has special meaning during this time of war when more than 140,000 Americans remain on duty in Iraq alone. As the president considers the next step in the Iraq war following the midterm elections, a new poll shows his approval ratings have dropped to the lowest point so far in his administration. We begin our coverage tonight with NBC's Jeannie Ohm. She joins us from the White House with the latest. Good evening, Jeannie.
Good evening, John. On a day when the nation's attention is on the men and women in uniform, the White House is looking for a new direction in Iraq. At Arlington National Cemetery.
Thank you. In Iraq, another day of violence with deadly new insurgent attacks on Iraqis as American soldiers marked Veterans Day away from home. NBC's Tom Aspel is in Baghdad.
On this Veterans Day, American troops in Iraq mustered for a special ceremony.
Congratulations, you're a nation.
Violence that has President Bush rethinking his Iraq policy and now turning to his father's former advisors for help. NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent Andrea Mitchell has that story.
After 6 years of rejecting advice from members of his father's foreign policy team, Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
In this program note, tomorrow on Meet the Press, Senator John McCain talks about his plans for 2008. As we reported here last night, the Arizona senator will set up an exploratory committee for a presidential run. McCain and Senator Joseph Lieberman are Tim Russert's guests tomorrow on Meet the Press. Now to the many Veterans Day celebrations held across the country today, where there were some common themes: gratitude for those who served in the past and who serve today, and the feelings expressed by some voters on Election Day about the war in Iraq. Here's NBC's Mike Taibbi.
For all who ever wore a uniform, Veterans Day is more than a parade. It's a checkpoint, said Vietnam vet George Hicks, to measure the connection between a country and its defenders. And along New York's sunlit Fifth Avenue Sunday, with the country at war, Hicks said early on he didn't see much of a connection.
There were some blocks, maybe 10, 15 people, and that was it.
But while it did seem at many stretches along the route that shoppers and pedestrians far outnumbered.
When NBC Nightly News continues this Saturday, outrage and anguish in the Middle East after an Israeli attack on the Gaza Strip kills 7 children. And later, dollars and cents, spending your money on digital downloads changes the tune for a major player in the music business. Israeli Prime Minister Olmert is on his way to Washington tonight for talks with President Bush. On the eve of those discussions, the U.S. today vetoed a UN Security Council resolution condemning an Israeli attack in Gaza earlier this week. It's an attack raising the prospects of more violence, even as Israelis try to remove troops from the area. We have a report from NBC's Martin Fletcher, and we have to warn you, some of the images are graphic.
It was yet another tragedy in Gaza, overshadowed in America by elections and political upheaval this week. It happened Wednesday around 6 a.m. With no warning, an Israeli artillery shell suddenly slammed into a Palestinian apartment building, then another one and another, killing babies in their beds. The toll, 19 Palestinians dead, including 7 children, all but 1 from the same family. Now Palestinians have sworn revenge and suicide bombs in Israeli cities again. The last one was 7 months ago. The Israeli Prime Minister quickly apologized.
It was a mistake. It was not a planned attack that just killed too many. It was not supposed to be on the first place. This was a technical failure.
The funerals were heartbreaking. The Israeli army blamed a faulty radar on an artillery battery. It guided the shells into an apartment building instead of the target 600 yards away. That was Palestinian militants who the Israelis say were preparing to fire rockets against Israeli towns. The killings in the Palestinian town of Beit Hanun came just as Israeli troops were pulling out after a 6-day operation there. The goal, to stop Palestinians in the town from firing Qassam rockets against Israeli cities. When Israel ended the siege, Palestinian militias resumed firing their rockets. Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert arrives in Washington tomorrow, knowing he'll face pressure to resume talks with the Palestinians. But he'll also bring a warning that Israel will do whatever it takes to stop those rocket attacks, even if it means another invasion of Gaza. Martin Fletcher, NBC News.
Talks may soon be underway between officials from the U.S. and North Korea. A Japanese newspaper reports that discussions could begin next week aimed at the resumption of 6-country talks on the North's nuclear program. Part of the preliminary review may include the financial sanctions imposed on North Korea. In New York City, it's the Navy to the rescue. The Navy has a new plan to free the retired aircraft carrier, the Intrepid, that has been stuck in the mud along New York's Hudson River since last week. It will dredge the mud that is wrapped around the ship's propellers, and the Intrepid will eventually be moved across the Hudson for renovations. When we come back, Dollars and Cents, facing the music about CD sales.
Dollars and Cents is brought to you by New York Life, the company you keep.
Now to our ongoing series, Dollars and Cents, and a look at how music lovers are spending money these days. In a word, it's digital. The explosion of Apple's iPod and iTunes is generating some new competition. Next week, Microsoft launches its Zune media player and a new digital download store to go with it. But the success of digital music comes at the expense of some of the biggest names in the business. Here's NBC's Ann Thompson.
The signs say it all. Going out of business. Everything must go. The cassette tapes made inroads, but were soon replaced by the CD. Now, downloading music rules. Still, some find it hard to let go.
I hope to be able to be here on the last day to personally turn the key on what most people consider an American icon.
Because the next big album release will be coming to a computer near you. Ann Thompson, NBC News, New York.
NASA scientists are watching a major storm on Saturn. Researchers this week studied images of the weather system that is 5,000 miles wide with winds topping 350 miles an hour. It's the first time a hurricane-like storm has been detected on another planet, and researchers are trying to find out how it developed. There is news tonight on a story that became an internet sensation this week. You may have seen images of the deer found wandering through the woods of western Michigan, unable to free itself of a jack-o'-lantern from Halloween. Well, local residents worried the animal would be unable to eat and might starve. Plans were in the works to tranquilize the deer to remove the plastic pumpkin, but tonight officials say the deer seems to have shaken itself free. And before we break, a quick program note. Coming up on Dateline, the latest to catch a predator as the investigation moves to California. That's Dateline at 8/7 Central Time. And when we come back this Veterans Day, a teenage girl's personal tribute to fallen heroes.
Ann Curry from Darfur, a dramatic first-person account of the growing violence raging across Africa. Only on Today on NBC.
Our special series Coming Home, NBC Nightly News Monday.
Finally tonight, a tribute to the men and women in uniform who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. It comes from a teenager who's taken it upon herself to make sure they receive a fitting farewell. NBC's Peter Alexander has our report.
Fort Richardson National Cemetery outside Anchorage. 15-year-old Nikki Cushing stands at attention, then begins to play. It's Ulmer, Alaska.
That's NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. Thanks for watching. I'm John Siegenthaler reporting from New York, and we leave you this Veterans Day in Arlington, Virginia at the Iwo Jima Memorial. Have a good night.
NBC News, America's news leader.
Sunday, after this historic election, two senators who will play a key role in shaping policy, McCain and Lieberman on Iraq, 2008 and more, only on Meet the Press. NBC.
Tom Cameron Quaid.
John Huntley. David Deutsch. John Chancellor.
Tonight, American and British troops searching for Americans kidnapped near Basra, hoping they get out alive. President Bush in Vietnam on America's war experience there and in Iraq, saying we'll succeed unless we quit.